Camera's pretty low to the ground. By ground I mean water. And it's starting to rain here a little bit. So I'm gonna pack things up. We'll take it. This is the newest gang member to the photography club. Waiting for the sun to set, and then we'll take some lovely photos out here. It's actually starting to calm down quite a bit. The waves are settling. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this episode we're doing some tips on landscape photography. And the first tip, I want to talk about getting everything in camera first. And more specifically, we're talking about filters. The reason why we use these filters are to do a few things. One, if there's too much light and we need to slow the shutter speed down to get a longer exposure, we want to put a darker filter on the front of the lens and darken the overall exposure so that we can then slow down our shutter speed. Shutter speed might not be the only reason why we wanted to darken the scene. Maybe we want to put our aperture at a higher value, closing down the aperture, allowing in for a deeper depth of field so that more of the scene is in focus. So that might be another reason why we put a filter in. Here's some circular filters right here. This is a 10 stop ND filter, and it's super dark and almost looks black on the screen. So what this will do is when I thread this onto a lens, it darkens the whole scene and only allows in so much light. Now I use there's many different types of brands. The brand that I use is Lee Filters. Their glass and their clarity is amazing. Some of the best. They are expensive. But if I have a professional high-grade lens with quality glass, wouldn't I want to have another quality glass on the front? Adding a degraded value filter on the front of your lens is going to degrade the whole thing, including your image quality. So when you're looking for filters, you might want to think about that. But this will darken it so I can slow down the shutter, or I can close down my aperture and I can take a photo that I want out in the field. And I got a few examples for that. Now, circular filters are not the only thing. I've also got square filters. And the reason why these could be helpful is during sunsets or really bright sunrises where the horizon's quite bright and the foreground is dark, you might want to add in a soft grad. And this is where the top part of the filter is dark and it is see-through clear on the bottom. So this allows the top of the horizon and above into the sky to be darkened, where your foreground stays the same in its exposure, so that you can get everything in camera nicely exposed, so you can take the photo and spend less time in Photoshop. This is a soft grad, and that allowed me to darken the top of the waterfall by using this polarizer. Now, there is a workaround to some of this where you can set up your camera to do bracketing, or you can just manually take different exposed shots so that in post-processing you can layer them together. But don't worry, we're going to get to that tip a little bit later on Photoshop and Lightroom. One of the most important in my line of work seems to be the polarizer. And with the polarizer, it's just like your sunglasses that you would wear in the summertime that are polarizing. It removes a layer of glare off of flat surfaces, water, shiny rocks, that sort of thing. And creates a much cleaner image without getting those nasty glares all the way into where your sensor is. You have that nasty glare off of a surface of water when you're taking a picture. With the polarizer, you can cut away a lot of that glare so you can see down into the water. So if we wanted to see that leaf that's down there, we can just remove that reflection so we can look down at the water. And the greater the angle, the more we can remove that reflection. And I'm just hand holding this, so it's not the best. Oh, there we go. That's a great change. And you don't have to go full polarized. You can go half maybe to still get some water surface in your shot. So here's our polarizer. That just fits right down in there. And check out that difference. Alright, so the next tip I have is also getting your image in camera, but through stabilization. Tripods are a very useful tool to keep your camera nice and stable. I use tripods. 90% of my shoots are on a tripod. So whether I'm doing architectural photography or wildlife photography, I use tripods for a lot of that. But there's different types of tripods that you can go ahead and get and use. I mostly use carbon fiber. It's nice and lightweight. I got another tripod over here, and I use this a lot of times for product photography or macro photography. So in the center here, I can go ahead and mount this horizontal, so I can have my camera here at the end and I can be pointing down, say, to a flower, some bees, and it's very useful for that sort of aspect. It is an aluminum tripod. It is heavier than the carbon fiber, but it's a lot less expensive. So this might be a couple $100, whereas this could be up to $1,000 depending on the brand and the size of tripods. But tripods offer incredible stabilization. Now, even when it's super windy out, you can mount a sandbag to here. A lot of them have a hook. It has a hook here right in the middle. And what that's designed there for is to add weight to the center of it to keep everything nice and stable when it's super windy. And it's going to be windy if you go to, say, to Iceland, or I was shooting up in northern Scotland, Ireland. The winds come right across from that land, and you need a tripod to even steady, the best of times. You can take multiple shots from your camera, different exposures, and if you have it on a tripod, you'll get them in the exact same frame so that in post, you can line them up from your darkest image to your brightest, and you can go ahead and create an HDR image, and you can stitch them together later in post. Alright, so my next tip is going to be Lightroom. So we're in Lightroom. So Lightroom is a great organization tool. So you can dump all of your images into a catalog. You can name the catalog Pier, Sunrise. Dump all of your images into it. Take a look at them. You can star rate them by hitting Shift. And here we go. Let's star rate the first row. And maybe I want to star rate that as 2. Maybe the next bunch, I'm like, oh yeah, those ones are keepers. I'm going to hit 6 to make them not red, 8 to make them green. So now they're green, so you can organize all of them so that, say, if you wanted to work on just the green images, you can just hit the green image down below and it'll remove everything else, allowing you to just focus on them. So Lightroom's great at organizing and narrowing things down, creating a nice good workflow. Let's just select one and start working with it. So hitting develop, I should say. Now Lightroom, when you make these sliding adjustments, will apply those adjustments to the entire image. You can go up and click mask, and there's a couple of different tools like a brush tool or radial gradient tool, and whatever you apply either by brush strokes or the radial where you're going to place that's where the adjustments will be made. So it is a little bit specific in some of the tools that it has, but not nearly as much as Photoshop, and we'll get into Photoshop in a bit. Lightroom's great just to make your quick edits over the entire image, maybe applying some brush strokes here and there, but for the most part making quick adjustments. So the highlights here I might want to bring down a tiny bit. Shadows bring up so I can see the foreground, and again it's applying it to the whole image. Maybe the exposure up. Now the white balance, it's way too blue for me, so I'm going to warm that up. Maybe add some magenta. Alright, so my next tip is Photoshop. I know we just got done talking about Lightroom and all the different sliders, and now we're talking about Photoshop, and what does Photoshop have that Lightroom doesn't? So here's a sped up workflow of my time in Lightroom, doing my quick adjustments with exposure, contrast, some sharpening, and then having to move everything over into Photoshop. So Photoshop allows me to stitch multiple images together, which gave me a wider, larger shot. So I took multiple shots of this castle. I also have a photo of the models, and I have a photo of a sky backdrop. And so the client wanted to have either a blue sky, sunset, some clouds, something other than a gray sky, which is what we had on this day that we booked this shoot. Now for landscape photography, it might be more like a fence post that you need to get rid of, or if you have some dust or water droplets on your lens and you need to spot remove those. Blending multiple exposed images in post, Photoshop is a great tool for that because you can do it in layers. This is what all of my work and efforts have spit out at the very end. So yes, using Lightroom to make all of the major adjustments to color and contrast and lighting, and then Photoshop to stitch everything together to make a final result. So the last tip I have for you is planning. Planning your photography adventure, planning where the Milky Way is going to be, planning when the moonrise is going to come up, planning where the sun is going to be setting. So planning is very important to making sure that you go out and get the best shot that you can. One of the apps that I use all the time is PhotoPills. Now PhotoPills isn't sponsoring me, I'm not getting any money or paid by PhotoPills at all. But PhotoPills is an app that allows you to see where the sun is going to come up, go down, where the moon is going to be. It tells you where the position of the Milky Way is throughout the night. And you can go ahead and scroll through the map, pick the location, even if it's on the other side of the world, and you can get the details a year or 2 years in advance on where the sun, the moon, the Milky Way is going to be, so that you can plan the perfect shot for when you go there, spend thousands of dollars, and get the shot. So one, you can then say, wow, this is not actually a good angle, and during the sunlight you can actually move around, set up different shots, and you can plan where you're going to set up your camera for that night. You can even take a look and say, well, the moon's not going to be up at this height until like 11 o'clock at night, so I'm not going to come back until say 10 o'clock. And I know the moon's going to be here because the lighthouse is going to be here, so I'm going to set up right over here. So you can do all of your planning, set your alarms, come back, and bada boom, it's all there. So there are other apps. Some of them are free for say stars, where Saturn's going to be, that sort of thing. You can go ahead and download those and use them as well. But planning is a big one. PhotoPills is an awesome app. I think it's is it $19? I'm not sure. I'll try and put a link down below if you are interested in getting PhotoPills. but planning is a big part on getting the shot, getting everything perfect for your image, and not having to waste your time too, because time is very important. So if you really like this content, please give me that thumbs up, hit that like down below, because this helps push it to other people who might be interested in my content. And if you haven't subscribed, please think about subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. There's other videos up here if you want to learn more about wildlife or landscape photography. I'd love for you to go ahead and check those out as well. Thank you so much and have a great day.